Wayne Church, a United Methodist community where we love and serve through Christ. My name is Pastor Greg, and I am so delighted that you have decided to join us together on this lovely, lovely Sunday morning. And a special welcome goes out to everyone who's joining us from, well, wherever you might be online. We're so glad that you're here with us. We've got some ways for you to stay plugged in even after our time this morning ends, and the first of which is something that you're definitely going to want to get plugged in right now. The men's breakfast is ongoing throughout the entire year, but this is the time to jump in because we're beginning a brand new study on the book of Romans this Thursday morning at 6:30 a.m. And guess what? No one has a conflict at 6:30 a.m. So you can make it. We hope to see you this Thursday morning. You can join us either in the well, right outside of the sanctuary, or you can join us from wherever you might be, even bed, over Zoom. Just be sure to reach out to me if you need the Zoom link for that. Well, that's something very specific that's going on this week in the life of the church. But to give you a more overall view of what's happening here at Wayne Church, I want to introduce Mike Marsh, who is on our leadership team.
Good morning. I'm Mike Marsh, a member of our leadership team here at Wayne Church. The summer can be a time for recharging, fun, doing some different things, and for some people, a time for vacation and adventures. Our church has experienced all these things over the last few months. And as you know, Pastor Greg and Rochelle Impink have joined us. Certainly, this is a time for new adventures and opportunities for new perspectives. No doubt you've noticed that there are many projects going on around the church. Great progress has already been made under the leadership of our trustees. Not only does the steeple look great, but it's a safer, more structurally sound, and ready to serve as a beacon to future generations to draw them to the church community. The columns are being replaced. Repairs have been made to the flat roof of the education building. Some necessary asbestos remediation has been completed. This work is much more than cosmetic. It has important safety and structural facets. So we thank the trustees for the many, many months of planning, diligent work, and oversight of the church and our parsonage. With so many things going on in the life of the church, the Finance Committee has been busier than ever. We thank Art and the team for their time and their service. Likewise, the leadership team is very grateful for the ongoing support of the church team and staff who make sure that the work of the church is done every day. Times of transition add to their workload, and the last few months have illustrated, once again, how fortunate we are to have people like Linda, Sue, Frank, Eric, Kevin, Matt, Christine, John, Becky, and Barbara caring for our congregation and enabling us to do the work toward our mission of loving and serving through Christ. Back in June, along with generous chaperones, our youth traveled to Virginia to serve in the Appalachian Service Project. They helped to repair and do work on homes for families who had significant needs. The support and generosity of this congregation and the many people who support the flower and plant sale made sure that that could happen. We're grateful for the impact that they had on so many lives of people we may never meet, but also on the lives of people here in this church. If you missed the opportunity to hear those students talk about their experiences and how that has changed lives and had such an impact, go back and watch the service. It's online and back on July 10th. Be inspired by what each of those students shared and the great opportunity it was to shape the future. Vacation Bible School just happened a few weeks ago. And just 2 weeks ago, many of us were here to see pictures, and we heard from Christine about the enthusiastic participation of children from our church and even beyond our church, along with the many youth and volunteers who were here. Not only was it a fun day, but it was a great way for children to engage in our faith community and learn about the Bible. So, what's coming up? There's a lot coming up just in the next few weeks. Be sure that you keep an eye on the weekly bulletin so that you stay up to date. Most of you see that come in as an email. Upcoming is the Welcome Weekend. That's what we've decided to call it. 2 W's, easy to remember. Welcome Weekend. And part of that is going to be our first annual church picnic. That'll be held on the afternoon of September 10th, right here at our church. It's going to be a great time. Everybody's invited, whether you've been a member here for decades or you've just visited recently, or even just thinking about visiting, whether you've been with us online or have been here in person. The picnic is open to everybody. Bring something to share. The leadership team will be providing the proteins and the paper products, activities, entertainment for all ages. It starts at 4 o'clock on the 10th. Look for more details on the website and in the weekly bulletin. The very next day, September 11th, is Kickoff Sunday. The beginning of the new school year brings new children and youth programs, so we look forward to classes starting up again. Christine is eagerly looking for volunteers. Eagerly looking for volunteers. So, if you're willing and able to help out, don't wait to be asked. She promises it'll be easy, no preparation, painless, and worth every minute of your time. Capital Campaign will kick off with an introduction to the campaign leaders during the September 11th service. For those who have not yet had a chance to personally meet Pastor Greg and his wife Rochelle, this is a great weekend to do that, either at the picnic or Sunday. Those are perfect opportunities. This is also the time of year when our choirs start back, so Eric is always looking for new members. Make sure that you stop by and talk with him if you're interested in the bell choir or in the chancel choir. That's a great opportunity for you to serve and participate in the service. Lots of other things starting back up. The Women's Fall Retreat will be coming up, the Youth Retreat, lots of groups, studies, book clubs, other opportunities for all of us to gather and spend time together. Looking a little bit more into the future, our annual Charge Conference is going to be November 20th, and that's going to be held at St. Matthew's Church this year. So if you're interested, pencil November 20th in. And also keep in your prayers, the group will be traveling to Israel, and also in November. Finally, I'd like to acknowledge the members of the leadership team. So those of you who are here, if you just stand up, that would be great, so people know who you are. That includes Ann Mackin, our lay leader, Juan De Leon, Sue Scott, who represents our trustees, Steve Bell, who leads our SPR, Staff Parish Relation team, Allie Hamilton, Brian Ivey, Michelle Leonard, who represents Wayne Cares, and me, your friendly representative of the Finance Committee. Thank you very much. All right, so if you're able, please stand for our call to worship. God is our refuge and strength. That's why we won't be afraid when the world falls apart. When its waters roar and rage. That's enough. We know that you are God. The Lord of heavenly forces is with us. Please join in a hymn. You'll see it on the screens. Lord, I need you.
Lord, I come, I confess, bowing here, I find my rest. Without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. When sin runs deep, your grace is more. Where grace is found is where you are. And where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. my one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. So teach my song to rise to you when temptation comes my way. When I cannot stand, I fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you.
Please join in the congregational prayer. Lord of ages, in our busy lives, we do not always take time to pray or sing your praises. We are to us now, yet we often buffeted by the winds of change, rocked by the earthquakes in our relationships, burned by the fires of doubt. Forgetting what we cannot see, we ask, why have you? Help us trust your presence, even when we feel utterly alone, trapped in our darkness and soul. With the promise of Christ as our hope, lead us from our own wilderness wanderings into the well-tended garden of your love. Amen. You please be seated. The ushers, please come forward for our tithes and offerings.
Let's rise and sing, Open the Eyes of My Heart. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. To see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. Open the eyes of my heart, Lord. Open the eyes of my heart. I want to see you. I want to see you. To see you high and lifted up, shining in the light of your glory. Pour out your power and love as we sing, holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. Holy, holy, holy. I want to see you. Please be seated.
Have you ever met anyone famous before? Anyone you really looked up to? Anyone that you really admired? And if so, what did you do in that situation? Did you go on and on about how much you loved and adored and respected them? Or possibly did you go on and on with them, giving them all of your own great ideas that you thought that they could really benefit from? Or if you've never met anyone famous, think about what you would do in that situation. Would you speak or would you listen? God is still speaking to us today, if only we would listen. And God speaks to us today in a variety of different ways, ways that we are exploring throughout the month of August and into September. Today specifically, we are talking about how God is still speaking to us through prayer. The challenge with this is in how many of us view prayer. At its best, prayer is a conversation with God, a two-way street with God, but how most of us treat prayer is we do all the talking. It's only us talking to God without leaving any space for God to be able to speak to us. But God is trying to speak to us through prayer, if only we might listen. To show you what I mean, I want to introduce you to this story that happened in the life of the prophet Elijah. Now, prophets are people who speak to God and speak for God, and if they're a true prophet, they better have actually heard from God before they speak on behalf of God. And so Elijah is a prophet tasked with speaking for God, but the work has become challenging. He's become daunted by the burden that it is to speak for God, not to mention that he feels utterly alone at this point in his life. Queen Jezebel wants his life. She wants him dead, and so he's on the run. He's a fugitive at this moment, and he feels so isolated. It's at this point that he needs to hear a fresh word from God. And so listen to how God speaks to the prophet Elijah. Elijah got up, ate and drank, and went refreshed by that food for 40 days and nights until he arrived at Horeb, God's mountain. There he went into a cave and spent the night. The Lord's word came to him and said, "Why are you here, Elijah?" Elijah replied, "I've been very passionate for the Lord God of heavenly forces because the Israelites have abandoned your covenant. They have torn down your altars and they have murdered your prophets with the sword. I'm the only one left, and now they want my life too." The Lord said, "Go out and stand at the mountain before the Lord. The Lord is passing by." A very strong wind tore through the mountains and broke apart the stones before the Lord, but the Lord wasn't in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord wasn't in the earthquake. After the earthquake, there was a fire, but the Lord wasn't in the fire. After the fire, there was a sound. Thin, quiet. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his face in his coat. He went out and stood at the cave's entrance. A voice came to him and said, "Why are you here, Elijah?" Before we can get into exactly how God was speaking to Elijah at this very moment, we've got to acknowledge the setting. We're told that Elijah was at Horeb, which had another name. That mountain was also named Mount Sinai. And if that sounds familiar to you, if that place sounds familiar to you, it's for good reason. See, Mount Sinai is the place where Moses ascended with nothing and descended with the 10 Commandments. It's a very important place in the story of the people called Israel. And just like Elijah spent 40 days there, Moses also spent 40 days there. And just like Elijah hid in the cave there, the Lord also advised Moses to hide himself in the cleft of the rock so that he could withstand the presence of the Lord as it passed in front of him. So don't miss this. Elijah is being set up as a new Moses. Just as Moses spoke for God, now Elijah is speaking for God. Just as Moses was tasked with bringing the word of the Lord to the people, now that's Elijah's job. Sometimes the Lord spoke in powerful and grandiose ways to these two important people of God. But at other times, the Lord's word came to them in a much more subtle fashion. And that's how God tends to speak to us today as well. Let's highlight that more subtle way that God spoke to Elijah. We read, "A very strong wind tore through the mountains and broke apart the stones before the Lord, but the Lord wasn't in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord wasn't in the earthquake. After the earthquake, there was a fire, but the Lord wasn't in the fire. After the fire, there was a sound, thin, quiet." Earthquake, wind, fire. No, we're not talking about a 70s band. We're talking about these big signs that were going on right in front of Elijah, signs that it would have made sense for the Lord to be working through. But the Lord wasn't in those huge and monumental acts. No, the way that the Lord was working was in much more challenging to perceive sort of ways. The Lord was working in smaller ways, quieter ways, ways in which Elijah really, truly needed to be still in order to fully perceive. We tend to point to those big signs and say, that must be how the Lord is at work. A quake that could rip apart the earth. Surely that was the Lord, right? No, not quite. A wind that could tear apart rocks. Surely that was the Lord, right? No, not quite. And a fire that could scorch the earth. Surely that was the Lord, right? Once again, no, not quite. What Elijah found is the same thing that probably many of us found, and that's that God's voice is subtle. Sometimes God speaks in much subtler fashions. How about you? Do you hear booming voices from heaven, clear as day? Or do you perceive the movement of God at work in your life in a subtler sort of way? Is it about the sensations and the gentle nudges? Maybe just a whispering word, very soft, challenging to perceive, unless you slow down and truly listen to that still, small voice. In fact, in the Bible translation that I've been reading from, we hear thin, quiet as the descriptor of the Lord's voice. And in other translations, it's a still, small voice. In yet others, a gentle voice, or possibly even sheer silence. That's how the Lord tends to speak, in very subtle and challenging to perceive ways, unless we are truly open to it and slowing down enough that we can catch how God is at work in our midst. This way of God speaking is very reminiscent of a psalm that I know is probably very important to many of you, and that's be still and know that I am God. Be still so that you can catch God at work in your life. Slow down so that you can see what God is doing all around you. Stop for long enough to perceive the ways in which that the Lord is working. And by the way, in the verses leading up to this familiar be still and know that I am God are some actions that are very, very similar to that which Elijah experienced as well. Earlier in the psalm we read, that's why we won't be afraid when the world falls apart, when the mountains crumble into the center of the sea, when its waters roar and rage, when the mountains shake because of its surging waves. We don't need to be afraid in those moments. Whenever God rips apart the rocks of the earth and the earth quakes and fires rage and storms assail us, no, all we need to do is be still and know that God is present. God might not be speaking to us in those sort of huge ways, but if we can back up from all of that noise, if we can learn to quiet all of those distractions that are in our lives, then we can hear how God is still speaking to us today. By the way, I love that gentle, be still and know that I am God, but I also love the way that another version of the Bible puts it, saying, that's enough. Now know that I am God. It's as if the psalmist is saying, just stop. Stop moving, stop talking, stop everything else, and know that God is in this place and God is trying to speak to us. But it's challenging to block out all the noise. It's challenging to stop and quiet all of the distractions in our lives. So how do you like to block out the noise? Whenever you need to make some quiet time, to actually be able to hear the still small voice of the Lord, what do you do? Or where do you go? Whenever I need some quiet, I like to go for a run. It's challenging to do anything else whenever you're running along. Trust me, I've tried, but it doesn't work out very well. Also, I like to eat, so I need to like to run, and luckily for me, just about a third of the mile up the road from my home is a trail where I can get away from all of the distractions of life and all of the crazy drivers that are around. It's wild out there. Speaking of which, there's an entrance to this trail, again, only like less than a half a mile up the road from here. And so some people participate in something called a rail trail church. It's where we do church kind of like we're doing here in the sanctuary, but on a much less formal way. We walk along on the trail and we talk about these same things. Maybe part of it is together as a group, maybe part of it is self-guided. If you would like to experience church out on the trail, let me know. It's a golden opportunity to have church as we walk along, so I'd really love to hear from you if that's something that you're interested in. But anyways, back to my time running along on the trail. Something that I love to do whenever I'm out for a run is just to wave to people, to smile at them. You never know how you're going to be able to brighten someone's day whenever you do that. And so what I'm used to getting in return is really people looking back at me like, why are you so happy? Why are you enjoying that run? Or like, I really don't think that I know you, so why are you waving at me? Or they're sort of searching through their brains to try to find where they may have met me before, because I'm acting like I know them out there as I am saying hello to them. I'm used to that, but what I'm not used to are so many people who are so focused on something else that they just don't even seem to notice that I'm out there smiling and waving at them. They might be focused in the exercise at hand, and that's one thing, but for a large percentage, they're doing something on their phone, typing something in, reading something in, talking on the phone. I don't know exactly what they're doing. I'm not here to judge. Maybe they're reading the Bible. Maybe that's the only time that they've got to stay in touch with loved ones. But whatever they're doing, they are participating in the myth that we call multitasking. Multitasking is the idea that you can do multiple things at the exact same time, and better yet, that you can do multiple things well at the exact same time. I'm not quite used to that level of busyness that people just don't even notice whenever other people are around them, saying hello to them. So that's something that's kind of new. But so how do you participate in the myth of multitasking, trying to give your attention, your energy to different directions? It's really challenging to hear God speaking to us whenever we always feel like we need to be doing something else at the exact same time. So I challenge you to turn it off here and there, to slow down enough to the point where you're only doing one thing, and even that you're only doing that one thing of trying to listen to God and not speak and not do anything else in the meantime with any other distractions, expecting that God's voice is going to come to you louder than the voice of all of those other distractions. So we're talking about how God is still speaking to us in prayer. It's always good to get Jesus' take on the matter, and here's what Jesus says in his instructions in how to pray. He says, when you pray, don't pour out a flood of empty words as the Gentiles do. They think that by saying many words, they'll be heard. Jesus said, don't go on. Don't babble on like a brook. Don't pour out a flood of empty words like they do. They think that by saying many words, they'll be heard. And I would add to that, you can't hear from God if you're only pouring out words. If you're only speaking to God, you'll never give yourself an opportunity to receive what God might be speaking to you. And so, from time to time, just turn it off, block it out, get yourself into complete silence. And guess what? It may be very uncomfortable to you, especially if you're not used to that sound of sheer silence. There's a practice that many people who follow Jesus participate in. It's a certain type of prayer. It's the type of prayer where we do absolutely no talking, where we do our best not to say any words and not even to think any thoughts, but we simply sit there in silence. Many people call it centering prayer or contemplative prayer. And so it's this time whenever we set aside, for some people it's 10 minutes, for others 20 minutes, 30 minutes, a full hour of trying to sit in silence, not saying anything, doing our best not even to be thinking anything, to quiet even the thoughts that creep into our minds, so that we actually allow God to speak to us. I will give you a warning about this, though. If you're not used to sitting in complete silence without trying to do anything else at all, if you're used to just going and going and going and doing and doing and doing, if you try this out, you might fall asleep. That's the place where a lot of us find ourselves in, because we just never ever stop. And so silence and stillness and quietness can feel just that unnatural to us. So what is God speaking to us through prayer? God is saying to us, stop and listen. Slow down long enough to hear my voice. Be quiet for enough time so I actually have the opportunity to speak to you. And we're going to participate in that in just a moment. We're going to close out our time together in prayer. But rather than me just pouring out a flood of words, we're going to sit for just a moment in silence. And then we're going to come back together by saying the Lord's Prayer together. Let's pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Well, friends, as we continue in our time of worship, we're going to acknowledge that there are storms in life. Sometimes fear and doubt assails us. Sometimes it's our circumstances where it just seems like everything is going awry. The earth is quaking, the wind is blowing, the fires are raging. It's in those moments that we need to be still and to know that God is present. And sometimes we need to lean on the comforting arms of our everlasting God. So I'm going to invite you to rise with me as you're able as we sing just that.
What have I kept? What a joy to find leaning on the everlasting arms. What a blessing is, what a peace is mine, leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning, safe and secure from all alarms. Leaning on the everlasting arms. Oh, how sweet to walk in this pilgrim lane, leaning on the everlasting arms. Oh, how bright the path grows from day to day, leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning, safe and secure from all alarms. Leaning on the everlasting arms. What have I to dread? What have I to fear? Leaning on the everlasting arms. I have blessed peace in my Lord's Spirit. Leaning on the everlasting arms. Leaning on Jesus, safe and secure from all alarms. Leaning on Jesus, leaning on the everlasting arms.
Friends, we are so glad that you have decided to join us together today, and we hope you'll join us again next time whenever we're going to talk about how God is still speaking through the church, which means all of us who are gathered here together today. And also, we are going to participate in Holy Communion, so you're not going to want to miss it. But until we gather again, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. Amen, and have a great week.